Hello and welcome to Shaman Sister Sessions, episode 71. I am Michelle Hawk and I am here with my shaman sister, Catherine Bird. This podcast offering grew out of our friendship, our sisterhood, and our conversations of what it means to do this work in the world. Who are we as divine embodied beings? Who are we as practitioners? And how can we love more, experience more, serve more, and offer more for ourselves, for all beings on earth, and for the earth herself. Today, we are delighted to bring into the conversation the realm of healing the inner child. This is a vitally important piece of work and of this practice that impacts us all as we go back and heal any child parts of ourselves that experience trauma. It relates to several past episodes that we've done, so we'll be interspersing with that today of, hey, go back and listen to this or go back and watch this for further information. But let's just start out with a little, I don't know, I feel like just doing a couple of deep breaths, honestly. I feel like I need that right now. So can we just begin with just a couple of dropping in breaths? Yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Great. Okay. Let's go ahead and together, if you'd like to join us, I don't know why you wouldn't, but let's go ahead and exhale everything out. Deep inhale. Then exhale with a sigh. Good. Deep inhale. Exhale with a sigh and a smile. Offering ourselves this space and time to drop into our innocent hearts. Inhale. Exhale with a sigh and a smile. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. I really needed that right now. So thanks for joining me. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I don't know. It's kind of a weird time, I think. I think the solstice, I think ever since the solstice, I feel like I've my ass has just been kicked against the wall, sort of. So, and I know that there's a lot of astrological kind of stuff coming up. So, and a lot of stuff around, you know, being true to who we are and like really feeling into what it is that makes us happy and what that we want to do, and being that authentic expression of ourselves, which is definitely coming up for me. And so there's a lot of places that feel in I don't know, like just looking more deeply and being present with, and sometimes that's not the most comfortable place to be. And I think it's also this amazing time that we're having this discussion about the inner child as this time of the summer season coming into focus, and the energy that is the summer of this childlike energy. And then also this focus on, hey, what makes you happy? What's the thing that's lighting you up? And it doesn't have to be what anybody else is doing. And what's that authentic expression, I think, is very present right now, which is also the realm of the child. So I'm excited to talk about this today. How are you doing, Michelle?
I am definitely feeling some of those similar themes. And I think to mention the correspondence that you're referring to, Kat, for those who might be unfamiliar, is, looking at the medicine wheel. How do we journey through the medicine wheel? And the realm of summer corresponding to the south, corresponding to the fire, the element of fire, is the realm of the child. And so please keep that in mind as we go into this work today from the shamanic perspective. Those are the elements and the energies that we're dealing with. I think I'm noticing a lot of those similar themes, and in terms of connecting with the original self and the original medicine, which is also in the realm of the inner child. So let's just take a moment and think back to, and this is a topic that we've brought up a lot in this podcast, is how do we know what our work is? How do we know what our truest essence is? Well, who were you as a child? Who were you before you learned who you had to be, quote unquote, or who you were supposed to be, or any of these societal conditioning pieces that came into play? Connecting with the original self usually involves a journey into connecting and working with the inner child and working with the innocent heart, which is why, during those couple of breaths, that's why I mentioned, let's drop into our innocent heart, and know that is the realm of the inner child.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess where we maybe should start is sort of a definition, or what are we talking about here? Inner child, we hear inner child, work, or working with the inner child, and what the heck does that actually mean? I mean, I think we can all assume that we have a childlike self that is within us, but what are we really talking about here?
Mm-hmm. There's a couple of different pieces at play, and I think they're both really important. So one of which is we're speaking with our personal, looking at childhood experiences, looking at things in our lived reality, our lived experience of our child self, and how that has landed within us and grown, and how we have grown from that place, and all of the pieces that took place in our lived childhoods that inform who we are now, and also the archetypal perspective of the archetype of the child. And there are many different faces of that child. There's the magic child, the wounded child, the abandoned child, the innocent child, like the fairy child, all of these different faces of the child archetype. And yet, I think, again, just keeping it pretty simple, looking at lived experience of childhood and of our personal relationship to the child self, and also the archetypal child, and what is the union, the combination of both of those pieces in the self that constitutes the inner child personal experience and archetypal energies.
Yes, that's very well said, because both of those are at play within us. And sometimes we might get confused because we might be having a connection to an archetypal energetic of a child aspect of ourselves that maybe we came in with, and we're running throughout this lifetime, and it's something that we need to look at. And it might not have a huge bearance on the actual reality of our childhood, and I guess maybe vice versa, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the interplay of what is the impact of our lived experience, and how does that either inform any archetypes, and here we're getting into a little bit of topic around past life influences or karmic influences that have a bearing on what are we coming in with, and how is that informed by our lived experience. So whenever we're working with the inner child, this is something that honestly I think every single person throughout their healing journey probably addresses at some point, or looks at some point, is what was your childhood experiences, what is your current relationship to your inner child, and how does that need to come into an aspect of healing or an aspect of illumination in order to integrate. This is one of our key words here, is how do we integrate the energies of our inner child to come into whole expression. Especially most of the people tuning into this, we're adults, right? And yet if we have unintegrated aspects of our child selves, we're not completely whole.
Exactly. And then we will find ourselves acting out shadow behaviors, doing things that maybe aren't of our highest expression and integrity, and wondering, why the heck are we behaving this way? Or why do I still have these same patterns and issues showing up in my life and my relationships? Or why do I have certain feelings of woundedness that are inside of me that have no bearance on the current situation that I have in my life? Say that I feel like I'm afraid that my partner is going to abandon me, and I feel like I'm in this abandonment energy a lot, and my partner is super showing up and being really present and loving and kind and saying I'm there and I'm here and we're in this and let's do this. And yet there is something that is coming from this older energy that needs to be integrated and healed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really common example. I think particularly any of these childhood energies impacting intimate relationships. This is where we see that play out a lot, because then, we can get into the whole, okay, what role does your partner then represent for you? A parent role or a grandparent role, a mentor, something in that, playing out the paradigm of someone I love will leave me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really common example. So with this, we're talking about integrating the wounds and integrating the traumas and the lessons of the inner child in order to come to a place of wholeness. Here, I think this is where, a lot of us have childhood wounding. Actually, I think it's pretty safe to say all of us have childhood wounding, whether or not, we had any specific traumas or, we're traumatized by all sorts of things. The trauma of birth, for one, coming to live in a human body is a hugely traumatic experience. So at the bare minimum, we all have that. And with that, we have these energetic signatures that inform the wounding patterns of our child selves. And if they go unchecked or unintegrated or unrecognized, they inform our wounding patterns throughout the rest of our lives. So it's really important, looking, Kat, at the example you gave of, I'm afraid that my partner will abandon me. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your current lived experience of being in partnership, and working on it from this perspective probably isn't going to help, honestly, until you go back and work on it from the child point, and then have the ripple effect of it affecting your current lived experience.
Yeah, exactly. And we like to think that because I'm no longer in a certain situation that somehow I'm A-okay. And it's rarely the case, right? That we are constantly being affected by the things that happened to our child self. And like, it doesn't even have to be wounding and trauma. There are, and I know, Michelle, like, we work with a lot of people who are called to the healer's path and to the shamanic path, and in mentorship work, working with people who have psychic abilities or channeling abilities and so on and so forth. There are often moments in time from childhood where one can recall, if guided to do so, the moments when we decided, oh, that's not safe. I'm not okay doing this. I'm being told that's too weird. I'm being told not to say that to someone. I'm getting judgment from a parent or a sibling or someone at school. And I'm going to, or I'm seeing something, there's some sort of being that showed up in my bedroom at night. I'm having a spiritual experience with some sort of energy or receiving something, and that's frightening me. And so I'm shutting that down. And so this is another place where inner child work is really important, because it can also give us information as to some of our gifts that we might be currently hiding or that are waiting for us to be more fully expressed, that can explain some of the ways that we are now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in regards to that aspect of, maybe suppression of gifts or being told, no, that's not okay. I mean, our wounds and traumas don't have to necessarily look very dramatic or abusive or traumatic. They can still have traumatic effects and still play out in these roles. So the one that you mentioned, Kat, yes, a very common one, especially in the realm that we work with, in the communities we work with, and then it's an aspect of, reclaiming and remembering, again, that original medicine, that aspect, oh, my child self talked to spirits and talked to fairies and knew that magic was real. And that was, the full expression of my innocent heart. Again, remembering that the innocent heart is the realm of the child. And through learning, okay, that's not okay, stepping out of my innocent heart, stepping out of my full expression. And then it then becomes a journey of reclaiming and reuniting with the whole actualized self as expressed in the inner child. Yeah, that's, there's a lot of pieces at play here. And I think they can be not necessarily super obvious either.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll offer a personal example here of something that that I am currently working with and experiencing in my lived experience as an adult. I have, my childhood was a relatively peaceful and you know, supported and loving experience. And I am currently having the lived experiences of a lot of challenge around my living situation and around the feeling of it doesn't feel stable to me. It doesn't feel predictable to me. And this has been the case for years now, years and years. I have been in this uncertainty and this slight anxiety, sort of chronic anxiety around my living situation. And there's been a lot of transition and instability. And recently I started looking at where the heck is this coming from? I'm doing everything I can to move in a direction of stability. And recently it occurred to me that when I was 10 years old, my family moved to Germany. And at the time, I mean, I was excited. I was a little bit nervous, but yeah, sure, let's go check this out. And we were there for a year. So, but having moved to a brand new country where I didn't speak the language, going to school with completely new people, I had no friends. I had to, completely reinvent my community and reinvent my relationships, and then to go back and be in a different place again with even though I was still back in the same place, it was again this process of complete reinvention and complete unpredictability in my living situation. And so I think that set the tone for me of a little bit of, I don't know where I'm going to be next. And I don't know when I'm going to lose everyone around me. And I don't know if, I'm going to feel abandoned of like, oh, I thought this was going to be my home, but not anymore. And so playing with the current experience of how can I go offer context to my child self who didn't know what was happening as a 10-year-old and didn't have any sovereignty to make decisions about that. Whereas now I do have the sovereignty and the awareness to make decisions around that and not go from this place of anxiety and panic and uncertainty. That's a current practical example for me.
Yeah. And that is an amazing example. And one of the things that you said in there was to offer context to my child self. And I think that is just like highlight and underline that line, because that is a lot of what inner child work is around starting to offer context to this part of you that still exists, that is living with an awareness of a child experience where it doesn't have the context of today. It doesn't have the context of I am powerful and I am safe and I am in charge of my life and I can make money and I can make decisions and I am in, a place that's safe. All of these different contexts that are now, there is generally still parts of us, because we are made up of all these different parts. There are still parts of us that are kind of living in the past. They're living as if right now I'm 10 years old and I have no idea where I'm going to be next. And so it is helpful for us as adults to start to recognize those places where, wow, when I was little, this was happening to me. I didn't feel safe in that moment. I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel important, whatever this is. And to kind of, go back in time in a way, in the moment that's now, in our meditations, and to be with that part of ourselves and offer the thing that child most needed and wasn't receiving in that moment. And that might be context over this is what's going on, or support, love, kindness, just a place to feel safe. Because now you can go, I'm safe. Why do I feel so unsafe? I'm obviously safe here. So where is the part of me that feels unsafe? Let me travel to that part. Let me invoke it. Let me call it to presence in this moment. Let me be present with it. Let me see what it really needs. And let me actually offer myself, that part of me, that thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You listed a lot of really important tools in there, Kat, and we will be elaborating on some of these, some of what you mentioned. There are different modalities and practices that work with this. One that I know we both do is journey work. And really that's what you're describing, is this meditation and journey to call in and invoke the inner child self and perhaps journey to those experiences or with those experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And we do have an episode on shamanic journey and astral travel. So that would be a good, yes, we do, I promise.
I'm like, I have no idea what we've done.
No, it's okay. So that would be a good one to check out if you're interested in more of that. But yeah, again, asking, a helpful perspective from this, again, using myself as an example, one of the pieces that I'm asking will be asking myself is, what feelings or beliefs or fears did I have that either I wasn't able to articulate at the time? Because this is another piece, is as a child self, we're not necessarily even able to express what exactly we're feeling or what exactly the fears or the concerns are. And I am 100% certain that as a 10-year-old, I remember being excited because I could tell that, my parents were asking, well, how do you feel about moving to Germany? It was already a done deal. Like I knew that, okay, it's happening. I can either yeah, let's go for it. Let's travel, be excited, or I can be sad and resentful. And that just, I didn't really, I wanted to be excited, and I could tell that they liked that I was excited. So I was getting excited and getting jazzed because I saw that it felt good to them that I was excited. And I saw that they were asking my younger brother, who was expressing some reservation, that I could see that there was concern there. So there was an element of pleasing my parents that was going on. And so going back and really sitting with, well, what did I actually feel under that? And maybe you already know as you're, sitting with your inner child self, or maybe there's an element of, well, as a child, I couldn't even articulate and didn't even wasn't able to express any of those that I was feeling. So really using, again, the context and the abilities, the adult aspects that we have to be able to go and give words, give context, give space for the full expression of the child experience.
Yeah, and letting those emotions be felt and acknowledged, because so often as children, our emotional experience was not validated. And for some of us, way more than others. And also, like Michelle, it's like when you're looking at it, what you're describing, it's like looking at a gem and you're looking at all of these different facets. So you're like, okay, well, yeah, I didn't have the context. I didn't have this. But then, I was doing people pleasing. So, okay, well, where does that facet of the experience, how has that shown up in what I'm experiencing now? So I'm experiencing maybe feeling chaos and uncertainty and lack of safety. Oh, and at the same time, I also see where I'm doing people pleasing in the experience that I'm having now. So it gives us.
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, awesome. Another thing for me to look at. You're right. It is that
because I slowly see you doing that.
Okay. Thank you for that reflection. But good point. Yes. This is a looking at all those aspects of the subtle pieces at play in a moment or in a pattern of behavior. And there are so many things that we can look at this with. And I invite you all now, just take a moment and kind of look at what is something that's showing up in my life right now, and play with it and look back to, does this have a root in a lived experience of my childhood? And I'm going to bet there is probably something in there that is related, either, you know, something that you learned, some trauma that you experienced. And again, trauma here is I'm using this as a broad term. For me, moving was a trauma of sort, even though it was, you know, with a loving, caring family, and, you know, I had all my needs met materially and had a beautiful place to live and got to travel as a kid and live in a foreign country. There was still aspect of trauma there, of unsafety, abandonment, and I don't have a fucking choice. So that has been the trauma that has carried through. So I invite you to look at what, even if it looks like it's okay, and it might not. A lot of us have really, you know, some messed up stuff that happens in our childhood. It might be very obvious, and yet pick it apart a little bit and look at what are all the subtle pieces that might be having threads throughout to my adult self, my lived experience now.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's important to note that sometimes if we have had some significant traumas in our life, we'll become so like focal pointed on those experiences that we forget to look further into the little stuff that happened, you know, that, oh, I feel really blocked creatively, and I am, you know, looking at it from, okay, well, it's my root and sacral. I'm looking at it from this place. And, oh, I experienced trauma as a child in this area because I had this very intense thing happen. And, you know, it might be because a teacher said, that's not the way that you draw that. And you're like, I've just decided that I am wrong or whatever, I draw something. So it can be so tiny and subtle, and it can feel like something that right now, when you look at it, it would feel insignificant. And at the time, probably your parents would look at it and go, well, what's the big deal? That's completely insignificant. Like, that's not going to mess my kid up. Obviously, this is just life, you know? But it can be things that we would not necessarily see them as something that we might have made a huge decision about ourselves around, or, you know, be carrying as some sort of energetic, you know, baggage we stuck in our bag, and we're like, okay, I'm just going to take this with me, and this is how I'm going to live my life from here on out.
Mm-hmm. You just reminded me of a childhood moment of mine, which I'm connecting to why I don't paint anymore. So I'm having a healing experience right now, you guys. What? Ooh,
Yeah.
Okay. You keep talking for a second. I need to think.
And sometimes that's as much as it takes. So sometimes it just takes that, like, oh my God, I just realized that, you know, I had a huge healing you know, over time around, I have an older brother. He was much bigger than me, and he was 6 years older than me, and he was an athlete, and he was much bigger, and he would just pummel the shit out of me. And just like, he always wanted to play like sporting things, basically so he could pick me up and like body slam me. And, you know, I had to realize over time that there was so much stuff that I was carrying around, you know, my interactions with men, when men who looked a certain way would come into my field, my like bristle and like my need to be a certain way around them, and the men that I chose to date. And, you know, you might go, well, but it wasn't like significant trauma, but it informed a lot of things that I decided about myself, that I decided about men in general, that I decided about how I had to show up in the world, who I had to be in the world, that maybe wasn't in full alignment with who I actually am. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it just takes that awareness, and you're like, oh, okay, great. And it just kind of like melts and allows for a new way of being and a new expression. Sometimes it's a little trickier. It requires more significant work. You know, if you have sustained significant trauma and things that maybe, you know, if you have huge blocks in your memory where you don't remember large expanses of your childhood, if you know things happened and you're not quite sure of the full extent of them and they were pretty horrible, it is helpful to get help and to have someone who can also hold space for things that come up. Because sometimes when we start going into our inner child work, one of the things that can happen is that we start to have our memories start to come back and we start to remember things that happened to us. Because one of the things that our system does, because it's so genius, is that when things are too intense in the moment, it will store them. So it's like, okay, well, later on when you got your shit together and you feel stable and you're living in a good place and you start looking at yourself, I'll just be here waiting for you. And I'll be there when you have the time and the energy and the support and the consciousness to be able to process this thing. And so sometimes you will find things in there that you're like, oh, wow, I did not remember that even happened. And so if that's the case, that's kind of a thing that happens. So it is important, if you feel that you need support, to find the people that can support you through these processes.
Absolutely. The amnesia that you're mentioning is one of our lovely protection mechanisms that we do have for really, the consciousness shutting down and taking space. And, this episode is not about, PTSD or about dissociative identity disorder. And yet these are also, AKA multiple personality disorder, but like splits in consciousness in order to protect the self. And this is, these are extreme examples of what happens to the brain and the consciousness when exposed to very severe trauma. And again, that's the dissociative identity disorder is a very extreme example. And yet this is a well-documented fact and a well-documented tendency of the way in which the consciousness protects itself. And amnesia is a slightly, not quite so extreme, but it is also another, significant protection mechanism. So with that, it is highly appropriate to seek out help, whether that's in the form of a healer or a counselor or a, some sort of trained professional who can guide you through the process. I am a pretty firm believer in the fact that you don't actually have to relive the experience in order to move through it and integrate it. Mm-hmm. I know that there are, especially in various schools of hypnotherapy or various schools of immersion therapy or whatever the deal is, that there are many modalities that say, in order to release this thing, you have to relive it. I don't believe that, and I don't condone that necessarily, because what that requires is people to relive some of the most traumatic experiences of their life. Now with this, it is possible, and I have found it to be possible, to release the energy, release the charge, release the energetic signatures from a place of having this safety in place, having the context, again, the things that we have as adults now that we didn't have as our child selves, that we can then go and offer. I'm safe now. I have the context. I have the awareness. I have support. I have, like you said, we're saying, Kat, all of these things to hold the space for that trauma or that instance to be understood and integrated and released in the way that is most beneficial to the wholeness of the self. So this is, again, something, tread carefully, but also, I don't know. I don't want to make anyone nervous about doing this. I want to instead offer empowerment of, this, you can do this. People are doing this. And again, Kat, like you were saying, sometimes it's just as simple as an awareness, so I'll share the little awareness that I had that just came up just now was, painting in the backyard on stand-up easels with my brother. We each had our own easel. And I saw that he was painting, he's 3 years younger than me. He was painting some total nonsense, like paint all over the place. And my mom was praising him. And so I started painting total nonsense all over the place. And she looks at what I'm painting. She says, Michelle, you're wasting paint. I'm like, I'm doing the same thing he was doing. Why didn't I get, why didn't I get praised for that? And then, noting like, I don't paint now. And I'm not saying it's a one-to-one correlation, but there's definitely something to go back and look at in that. And that was a brand new awareness that just came up because of what Kat was saying about creativity of, oh, me trying to produce something is a waste of paint. So I'm going to sit with that. And that's a awareness. And that might be enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I also, I don't know, this is kind of a whole, we're definitely going to have a episode on soul retrieval very soon. This summer's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
But
next week.
Our next episode is soul retrieval. So we'll talk a lot more about this then. But I believe that a lot of the inner child work, when we're talking about soul retrieval, which, tune in next week, but bringing back these soul fragments that have been splintered away and leave us with less than we could be having as full, whole, amazing expressions of ourselves. These things happen in childhood, where we have something that happens and it's like the little kid part of us is just like, whoop, I'm gone. Like, I gotta hide. I gotta get out of here. This isn't cool. This isn't safe. This isn't fun. I'm not doing it. And, a lot of the process of soul retrieval, I believe, can be done through inner child work, through working through those parts of just meditating and finding those parts of ourselves that do feel like they're hiding and they're alone and they're afraid and they're not being seen, they're not being loved, and being able to show up for them and be present with them and just be with them. And what do they need? What do they want? And 9 times out of 10, they need some damn love. They need some love. They need you to show up and say, I love you. 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 You are amazing. You're an incredible painter. You're so smart. You're so cute. You're so talented. You're such an amazing light. I love you so much. I want to play with you. I want to enjoy life with you. I want to go on fun adventures with you. What do you want to do? And when we can do that with that part of ourselves, then we get these amazing answers where we're like, oh, I want to eat more ice cream, and I want to go to the beach, and I want to paint paintings, and I want to I want a puppy. I want all of these things. And then if we actually incorporate those things into our life and we start going to the beach and we get a puppy and we start painting, and think of how much more fulfilling and rewarding and enjoyable that your life is going to end up being if you actually just take a little bit of time to listen to this part of yourself that is not fully expressed. It's not fully present within you. We're taught to work hard, to put our nose down, to keep our mouth shut, to life is hard. You have to do a job that you don't like in order to make money, to live in a place that isn't really where you want to live, and all of these things. And the more decisions that we make in that direction, the more our child gets squished and squashed and pushed and shoved and loses their voice. So what would happen if you actually gave this child part of yourself a voice to be able to say, I want a damn puppy, and I want to paint, and that could change everything. That could just make, it doesn't have to be all about oh, I have to relive my trauma, or I have to deal with this horrible thing, and I have to gut around and wrench myself open and make myself feel horrible. No, maybe I just need a puppy and I need to paint some paintings, and my life's going to improve 150%.
Kat, do you need a puppy? Times now. Do you need a puppy?
I need a puppy, but there's too many coyotes up here.
Oh, okay. Well, get a big dog, or a puppy that'll be a big dog. There you go. Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, I hear that one enough times. Okay, come on, what's really going on? But yeah, and asking I think another part of this equation is knowing that everything that your inner child is doing is designed to help you in some capacity, even if it's it is exhibiting as destructive behavior or as or fear-based, so Kat, you gave the example of, I'm afraid my partner's going to leave me. So, maybe what that ends up acting out is the inner child makes us, be needy or clingy or start fights, right? To attract attention and attract reassurance, because, and they're doing this from the logic piece. It's not necessarily, it doesn't make cognitive sense necessarily, but if I get them to pay attention to me, then I know that they won't leave me. Or if I get them to, have enough focus on me, then they won't leave me. Or for me in my living situation, my inner child is like, we have to be on alert all the time because we never know when we're going to have to move. And, it's not safe to fully settle in, and I might lose all my friends because I have to move, so maybe it's not safe to have a lot of friends, right? And so it's from this mechanism of trying to protect us or trying to keep us safe, even if it doesn't necessarily make cognitive sense. So then going in and having that conversation, like, yes, giving them the thing that they need, but also like, well, what are you trying to do here? Oh, you're trying to make sure that if I have to move again, it's not so traumatic. Well, here's the reality of what's happening. The digital age, I'm an adult, I get to choose where I live. All of these pieces are in place. So, okay, you're trying to keep me safe and trying to protect the heart. Let's steer that in a different direction. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I love that you're doing that for me. Thanks for looking out. Let's protect the heart, and let's bring joy to the heart by having more friends and by really enjoying the home. Like, let's decorate the house, and let's, plant seeds in the house, plant roots in the house so that it feels really good here. And, Kat, maybe for the example that you were giving around, I'm trying to make sure that my partner stays by causing a lot of attention and needing a lot of attention. Well, what if we get to play with a different way of relating to that, still feeling safe and secure in the relationship? Or, and so it's knowing that your inner child really does have your best interest at heart, even if they're acting like a bratty kid and steering your behavior in destructive ways. There is a way to shift that into, okay, let's take the core reason of this and steer the behavior in a healthy direction to fulfill that core need. It's not about that the inner child is doing anything wrong. It's not that they're problem causing. It's just that they don't have all the information. So they're making decisions based on incomplete information and probably a lack of resources. Because think about, little 10-year-old me, I didn't have a choice where I was moving. And so, but now as 31-year-old me, I get to choose what's happening. And so my 10-year-old self, by acting from this place, it's from a place of, I don't have the power and the resources to take care of that. So how do I give myself the power and the resources to have what I need?
Yes. Honestly, there's so much there, right? Mm-hmm. That we get to do this deeper inquiry work as to why the heck do I behave the way that I behave? Because honestly, it's like, I don't care how conscious you are or how much you meditate or how amazing that your yoga practice is or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. There are still moments when the inner child, because I see it for myself all of the time, and especially in relationship is where you see it probably the most. But there's still those moments when that part of you takes over and does things, says things, behaves in ways that from the outside, you're like, what the heck? What the heck? This doesn't make any sense. Why are you acting out this way? And so there's also that part of us, especially if we're like, well, I'm conscious and I'm spiritual and I'm a healer, so I should be able to squish this part of myself and stop them from behaving this stupid way and, shame ourselves into submission in a certain kind of way, which doesn't ever really work, instead of going through these processes of acknowledging what's really there, what's the thing underlying the thing, and what are, like you're saying, what are we trying, that inner child self, what is it really trying to get, and how do we give context, how do we give love, and how do we support a new way of getting the desired result that we're trying to get.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I want to take a moment to touch upon the archetypal aspect here too. We've devoted a lot of time today to the lived experience of the child, and knowing that our child selves, our inner child selves, are a permanent part of our archetypal makeup. How do we, let's have a little bit of consideration about what is it like to be a healthy, fully expressed child, and what are the qualities of that, and how, looking at what are the archetypes, the sub archetypes of the inner child that we have at play. So one of the big themes that we were mentioning today was the abandoned child, and or another one like the lost child, right? And so looking at these, well, what are their signatures? What are their fears? What are their gifts and their challenges? And then looking at, okay, well, what is for example, the magical child? That's one that I really embodied and / still do embody when I'm in my innocence and in my inner child. That for me is a place of strength and gift from the inner child perspective. So I encourage you also to play a little bit with the different faces of the archetype of the child. And, there's kind of like the wise child, the ageless child, again, is another one of these archetypes that I think a lot of us healer types have in our makeup. The child who comes in who's like already 100 years old, right? We've all met those kiddos, or / we were those kiddos, or still are. And looking at what do we need in order to come into the full healthy expression of the child self, and let it be an informed, powerful part of our archetypal makeup. With all of this, I think it's really important to emphasize, as we're integrating pieces of the child or of the inner child or of the childhood experiences, we're not getting rid of them. We're not saying, okay, that's done, it's released, it's gone. No, we're saying, how can I bring this into its healthy expression? How can I bring this aspect, and we can do this work through all these different seasons of our lives. What is the gift and the shadow of the adolescent? What is the gift and the shadow of the adult? What is the gift and the shadow of the elder? And all of these pieces, it's not that, oh, I'm not a kid anymore, so I don't, I need to release it and then move on. It's, I will always have this child part of me, just as I will always have an adolescent part of me, and I will always have an elder part of me, even though I haven't lived the elderhood physical embodied season of my life yet. As a 31-year-old, I still have an inner elder. And so it's looking to, how can we come into right relation with a full healthy expression of these different seasons of our lives, and know that they're all a part of our permanent archetypal makeup.
Yeah, really important. And I know that you gave so many good examples of because I know that we will get people who are like, well, but where can I find a resource about the child archetypes? But you've given quite a few. And if you can think of one, it probably is a thing, because the archetypal energies are within us all. And so we always went, oh, I want the resource to learn about the thing. And honestly, like if it's coming up for you and it's resonating with you, and you can see like, oh, these would be the shadow aspects, and these would be the gifts of this archetype, then it is a thing. So don't overthink it. Don't underthink. I don't know whether you're over or underthinking here in this.
Don't overthink it. Just and actually for this, in terms of further resources, we've done a few archetype episodes. So healing archetypes was one that I would actually encourage you to go back and listen to, healing the archetypes in light of particularly the child archetype. And I think that one's probably the most relevant in terms of archetypal work. But I'm trying to think of any other episodes that we've done that would be really helpful for this work. Shamanic journey and astral travel would be helpful. The soul retrieval episode that we'll be doing next week, / actually a lot of the episodes that we have going on in July. We've got I believe a past lives episode. We've got a lunar consciousness of grief episodes featuring a special guest to be announced very soon. And I think there's one more that I'm forgetting right now in July. But July is a lot of those pieces that we'll be getting to will pertain to this work as well. And emotional release and catharsis would be another really good one that we've done that pertains directly to this inner child work as well.
Yep. So Michelle, do you have anything that feels super vital to leave people with as far as doing this work and diving into these awarenesses?
Yeah, one of my biggest, and actually, and now that I'm thinking of it, also the nature of healing episode that we did pretty recently, because the thing that I'm about to say pertains directly to that. This is possible. It is absolutely possible. And I think that so often we get caught up in a, like, can I do this? And is this real? And do I, is it possible? Can I actually accomplish this in this lifetime? Or, is it going to take 10 lifetimes to heal this? Or am I always going to be carrying this wound around? And my personal philosophy, again, you're getting doses of Michelle philosophy of, yes, it is possible. Yes, you can do this. And go for it. Honestly, go for it. Like, you need this. You deserve this. The world needs you to have this healing, to have this catharsis, and not only for yourself, but for all of us. So remember, the healing work that we do for ourselves impacts everybody. And think about, just for a moment, the healing work that we do for our own inner child selves. The two examples that I mentioned about the living situation, the house thing, home thing, and around the art, that is directly related to my brother, my parents, both of those, related to, my childhood friends, related to my relationships with friends now, related to my relationships with my family now. And so imagine just for a moment that me coming into full healthy expression of painting, I have all these hangups about painting. I fully acknowledge that. And I'm just imagining, well, what would happen if I healed that? What would happen if I painted? What would happen if I let myself have that freedom? And the idea of, I'm not wasting paint. It's related to abundance and scarcity, right? There's so many things at play here.
There's so many things.
So many things. And it's not just about me. And I want to leave you with that too, of all this healing that we do for ourselves is not just about us. Everything, I can guarantee, everything that you do to heal your inner child and yourself in this child self will impact others in your life, whether they're currently in your life or they were in your life or they're yet to come.
Yeah.
So please know that you can do it. It's possible.
Yeah. And especially to think of the fact, now that Michelle has that awareness, she would, if she has a child, she was never going to say, you're wasting paint over there, right? She'd be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to say that. Uh-huh. And so without having that realization, she might not have the consciousness around, oh, that's a thing that could actually stop somebody from being a painter. Okay, maybe I will not say that. So, it really, for the next generations, especially if you have children or around children, it's important to do your own inner child work, because then you have these realizations around oh yeah, that might not be helpful for me to say that or do that or whatever, because that wasn't really nice when it happened to me, even though it was the standard, it was it was okay. It's still okay for that to be something you say or do to a child, but I'm going to make a different choice because that wasn't helpful for me. Mm-hmm. I'll say a little tip is just patience and kindness. I think when we're doing this kind of work, that it it doesn't have to be that you have the realization and then everything changes. Like, it takes a little bit of time for things to come to completion and for cycles to heal and so on. And so it's like being patient and kind with yourself. Sometimes it might cause emotions to come up or things to feel really raw and vulnerable for a time period. And so to be very kind to yourself if you're working on something, and give yourself extra nurturing and love and compassion for going through a process, which is, our child is a vulnerable aspect of ourselves. Children are so vulnerable. And so it's important to remember, I'm tapping into something that's very vulnerable. Even if it's like not a big deal, it's like our child self is very vulnerable. And so to just be extra soft, compassionate, and kind with yourself when doing this kind of work.
I think that's a beautiful place to leave our recommendations for today. If you are interested in more, please do go ahead and look into those other episodes that we mentioned. Again, emotional release and catharsis, shamanic journey and astral travel, and healing the archetypes, to name a few. If you are interested in those are all available, all of our past episodes, on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. You can also find links to those through our website, shamansistersessions.com. You can also go ahead and send us an email if there's anything in particular that struck you from this or any other episode. We would love to hear from you. We've got a contact form on our website, or you can email us directly, shamansistersessions@gmail.com. Go ahead and please follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, like our videos, help other people access this information, share it out if it resonates with you. We're always looking to put this information in the hands of those who need it most. You can also support us if you're interested. If this or any other episode has spoken to you, please consider donating to support our work. This is entirely free. It always will be. And we need your support to continue to make this happen. You can do so on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Shaman Sister Sessions, and you can become a patron of our work. Thank you so much to all of our current and past patrons who have donated to support us, particularly our alchemical allies, Kai and others among them, for supporting for us to continue to put out this offering. We're so grateful, and it is our great joy.
And next week we will be talking about soul retrieval, right, Michelle?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific. Join us live so that you can be present for the initial transmission, and we will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.